Hi, I'm Danny with etrailer, and today we're going to take a look at and I'm going to show you how to install the DeeMaxx Hydraulic Disc Brakes. Let's be honest, when you're towing a fifth wheel trailer or a big tow hauler, you're going to want your brakes working properly, especially when you're going down a steep grade like a mountain. These are going to give you the confidence you need to brake abruptly on the road, and these are a lot better than drum brakes because you can actually see the pad, so you know when you need to change them. Whereas the drum brakes, you have to take out the whole assembly to do maintenance on them or see how they're doing. And another reason to switch to disc brakes is drum brakes will fade when they get hot. So again, if you're going down that steep mountain and you're pressing your brakes a ton, they're going to get hot and you're going to want something that's going to enact fast, like these disc brakes. Now DeeMaxx brakes specifically coat all their components with something they call a max finish, and this has been tested through over 1,000 hours of salt spray. So this is a huge deal if you live near coastal regions where there's a ton of salt and winter. These are going to stand the test of time. The rotor parts are vented, as you can see here. So this is important because it helps shed heat when you're working down those hard grades, and it'll actually shed water so these won't rust. I'll run down some of the stats so you know that these are going to fit with your trailer. Now these are compatible with an axle capacity of 7,000 pounds, and they have an 8 on 6.5 bolt pattern. And they also have 9 16ths wheel stud, so the diameter of the wheel stud here. If you decide to get this upgrade for your trailer, then please let us know in a review or comment how you're liking them compared to your drum brakes. Now as far as the install goes, this is pretty straightforward and simple. The rotor and hub are all one assembly, so you can just throw it on there. Now we did a whole assembly today with the actuator and lines. If you're ready to get this installed, then follow along and I'll show you how to do it. First off, before we get our new brakes on, we're going to have to take the tire off and our old drum brakes off. So I'll go ahead and take a 22mm socket and get this tire off. To remove our old grease cap, I just have a small flathead. I'm going to use a hammer and get this worked around. Going to rotate it, kind of like a paint can. Just get this off. And don't worry about damaging this because your kit will come with new ones. So I got that removed. Take my screwdriver and I'll get this retaining clip removed as well. And it's a good idea to have a lot of shop towels lying around because you will need to save this. So I'll get that set to the side. Now you should be able to remove this nut by hand. You should be able to pull this off. Now there's going to be a washer you're going to want to save. So I'm going to pull this forward and that should fall out. I'll save that washer and I'll get this removed. I'm going to wipe off this old grease on the spindle here. We'll be putting new grease on this soon. Going to be 5 nuts securing the back part of the brake assembly, and I'll take a 14mm socket and get these removed. Now there's a ton of gunk on these nuts, so I'm actually just going to back them off all the way to the end here because they kept getting stuck in my socket. Now I'll get them all removed by hand. On the back side of this drum brake, there is going to be some electrical wires, and I'm just going to snip those back. And eventually I'll get these all tied away, but for now I'll go ahead and take this off. These old bolts we're not going to use, we're actually going to use the ones that come in the kit. So I'm going to go ahead and get these all hammered out. And put the new hardware in. I got the caliper bracket. I'm facing the part the caliper goes on towards the rear of our RV here, and I'm going to try and get this as close to a 3 o'clock position as possible. Now I'll get all our hardware hand tight. I'll tighten these down in a star pattern, and if you are using power tools, I would recommend using anti-seize because this hardware is prone to breaking. And I am using a 14mm socket and wrench to get these all tightened down. Your instructions don't give you a torque value, but I like to torque them anyway, so I went online and looked up these specific bolts and what they should be torqued down to. So that's what I'll do. And if they're not tight enough, you may need to hold the back still. It's time to pack our bearings. I'm going to start with our larger one. This will go in the back side of our rotor hub. So you can use a bearing packer, but I'm going to do it where I'm going to just push it in the back side of this, and it will ooze out the top here. Just put some in my palm, pushing firmly down until I see it oozing out the top there, and I'm just going to rotate it until the whole thing is packed full of grease. While I have all the grease already on my gloves, I'm going to put some on the inside of our hub here. And I'll put some on our spindle. I'll drop our bearing inside of our hub on the back side. And now, since I got this all over my gloves still, I'm going to pack the small bearing as well. I will put our grease seal right in the middle here. And I got a 4-inch hole saw with a punch, and I'm going to put that on top. I'll smack this down, and this will seat it evenly in our hub. You want this outer part to be flush, and this rubber ring can be sticking up a little bit. That's what you want. Now I'll take the hub and slide it onto our spindle. And I'm going to look back there and make sure it's all the way seated to the back. Push the small bearing in place. Take our washer, make sure you line up the flat part so that goes on properly. And then I will tighten on our nut. I got an 1.5 inch socket. I'm going to put that on our nut, and I'm going to rotate it while I tighten this down. And until the rotor feels pretty stiff, and then I'll tighten it a little bit more to make sure it's all seated to the back. Now I will back it off and hand tighten it back down. I got our retaining clip that came off our assembly, and I'll put this back on. Now if that doesn't clip right on, you can back off that nut just slightly to get this to seat. One of these arms will go on the point of the nut, and one of them will go on the flat side. Before I grease it the rest of the way and put the cap on, I'm going to put our tire back on. I'll get this secured just with 2 lug nuts on either side. I'll test how secure our tire is onto our brake assembly. I'll apply some pressure back and forth in that direction and see if there's any wiggle. And ours is pretty tight. I'll give it a spin and make sure it's all spinning properly. It's not too tight. And we're looking good, so I'll take this off. I'll use a grease gun, put it in our fitting up front, and pump some grease into our system. Now, it is important that you're using the same grease when you're packing as when you're pumping in right now. You're not wanting to mix different greases. And you can see it start to flower around there, meaning it's full of grease. And I'm going to give the rotor a spin to make sure it fills the entire thing. And I'll give it a couple more pumps. And now we can put the cap on. We'll take the grease cap, and I have this yellow rubber grommet, and I'm gonna just put this in the center here, and you can take this out to access the spot you can fill your assembly up with more grease. Now I will put this in place. Take a rubber mallet and get this hammered on. Next up, I got the caliper, and I'm going to push these bolts all the way in because this insert here needs to be out of the way. Make sure our brake pads are where they need to be. And this is going to go on our right side, and there's going to be holes in the back of here, and we'll just push these in and thread them in when we find them. So I'll get this on. I'll scoot it back and forth to find that hole. And once I do, I can thread these in. Once you get them both hand tight, I'm going to take a 13mm wrench, and it's good to have a ratcheting wrench, make this go a lot faster. And I'll get these tightened down. Now I'll torque these both down to the specs in the instructions. And actually the torque value for this is on the caliper itself. Now on the top one, it's a little tight, so you may need a crow's foot to get this one torqued. It's going to be a brass fitting on the back side of your caliper, and I'll go ahead and get our hose and thread this in. Gonna make sure it's going in smooth and it's not going to be cross-threaded. I'll take my line wrench and get this tightened down. And you want to make sure this is tight, but you don't want to over-tighten. So usually once it's showing some resistance, I'll go ahead and just do maybe 1/8 of an inch more. Now we can bleed our brakes. We're going to start with the furthest one. This is the line that's longest to our actuator. And I got this rigged up with a bottle on the end, and now we can put fluid in the actuator. I'll begin pouring as specified in the instructions and get this filled up. For this part, you're going to need 2 people. One person to pull your breakaway switch or hook your vehicle up and use your brake controller, and someone else to bleed the brakes in the back. I'm using a 11mm socket, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. All right, it's open, and we got some fluid. I'll leave it on a second and close it up. Now we want to work the same axle and go from furthest to closest. So now I'm on the other side. We'll go ahead and bleed these as well. It's open. All right, it's closed. Once you've bled the brakes and there's no air in the lines and you've determined there is no leaks, we can now tidy everything up and get our wheels back on and torque down. Now is a look at the DeeMaxx Hydraulic Disc Brakes. Thanks for watching.